Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I am delighted to have Amy Carlon here to be chatting a little bit about her business journey. But before we dive into the episode, I thought I would hand over to Amy to do a bit of an introduction to who she is and how she helps people.
Thanks for having me. My name's Amy Carlon, obviously, and I run Carlon and Co, which is a photography and creative consulting company. We're based in Geelong, but we travel all throughout Australia, helping people with their photo, video, web, copy, and graphics for all their content creation for their businesses.
Maybe if you wanted to share a little bit about your own journey to where you are, firstly living and also where you are at in business.
Well, business-wise, I went to uni and I studied photography and did my postgrad in marketing, but kind of because I felt like I needed to go somewhere, needed to go to uni. Everyone else was going to uni, but I was a creative. So I was like, is this really meant for me? Do I really need a HECS debt? Like all the things. And I just went, but it was honestly the best thing for me socially. And we mainly did art history, but I was working for my university, helping run their social media with a team of people that I sat under, and I hated an office job. It was my first ever job. And I was born with a disability, which we can go a little bit more into, but it has impacted my physical abilities. And I always thought maybe an office job was like my only option. And in that moment, I was like, nope, I'm out of here. So I came for a short trip to Geelong and I really liked it after being in Wagga. And 8 weeks later, I moved down here to start my business and explore the commercial side of photography.
Let's go a little bit deeper into, you mentioned that you are a person who has a disability. This is something you have, I guess, known your whole life?
Yes, correct. So I was born with a disability called arthrogryposis syndrome. AMC is also what it's known as. So shortening of the tendons, which can contract the joints in your body. It also we have smaller airways, smaller veins, smaller jaw lines, there's so many characteristics regarding our health. But for me, I was a severe case with my feet. And my hands and one of my shoulders. So with my legs, I had spent most of my childhood in hospital growing up in Sydney to have surgeries to straighten them so that I could potentially be able to walk. The doctors basically told my parents I wouldn't be able to. So we had Achilles tendons lengthened, we had 3 Elizarov frames, you name it. I was a bit of an experiment for a while there. I became a case study for my specialist who was teaching people how to use Elizarov frames and talar spatial frames, and they managed to achieve great results. I was heavily wheelchair dependent until about 20, and then I haven't used one since.
Wow. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, because you mentioned that you had an office job. And I know that you can only speak to your particular disability, but what was your experience of how that affected your ability to work in that sort of office environment?
Even though I thought a stationary job would be best for my physical needs, because I can't stand for long periods of time, I can't walk really far, uneven surfaces are hard, like you name it. It actually was bad. Sitting there at a desk all day, not only as a creative human is that limiting, but physically, it was actually more painful than I thought it would be. And I realized that when I was also having bad health days and I couldn't come to work, and this is before working from home was a thing, I was struggling to do my job. That's meant just sitting at a desk, which blew my mind. So I was like, if I'm struggling with this, surely I can just struggle through life doing something I actually enjoy, which would be standing on my feet taking photos instead. So it was great learning experience. Don't get me wrong, they treated me very well. I learned so much in a very short period of time, but I think it opened my eyes to the fact that there's a lot more out there, and I was limiting myself to preconceived idea of what I should be doing, not what I could be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was sharing with you off air that I was in a major car accident. I was going to say last year, but it's actually it was 2022 now. And having gone through, I incurred a severe whiplash injury. So, like you, I can't sit for extended periods of time at a desk anymore, and it's a really unusual experience. But I've been incredibly blessed that I run my own business
Yeah.
because I think about my corporate days. I couldn't just get up and go sit on the couch or crawl back into bed back
Yeah,
in those days.
exactly.
It would have been a real challenge. And I'm glad that you made that scary decision to walk away from, I presume a secure paycheck to
Yeah,
stepping out
the
on your own.
payment within that as well was a thing for me. It's like security. I'm like, okay, well, I'm a disabled individual who has other health needs. I don't know when something's going to happen to me, when I won't be able to work, when I can work. So having that consistency, just like anyone though, is amazing. And for the first time in my life, because I was lucky that I had family that would support me up until that point, especially because of my disability. And so to walk away from that, my parents were not happy at first. I will tell you that much. They were like, okay, sure. But once you don't let money kind of control your passions, I think that's when you allow more to come in.
So let's talk a little bit about that because I find it's easy to say this stuff in hindsight.
Yes.
When your business has grown, you've got a bit more consistency with clients and income and things like that. But going back to those early days, what was it like going, I literally don't know when I'm next going to be landing my next client or earning money, or was it a pretty seamless journey for you?
I feel like it's still almost like that. Like I don't like having my schedule and my books booked out for like 12 months in advance. I really don't like living my life around other people's life goals. So I really just take it as it comes. And it was always the way. And I don't think I've changed that mindset. It's like what will come to me is meant for me. Being open minded doesn't mean you're not working hard, but not putting pressure on achieving a certain figure, but
Mm,
appreciating what you actually are getting in. I was lucky that when I moved here, I networked a bit beforehand, but it just kind of took off. It took off quite well. I just put myself out there, went and showed my face, messaged so many people on Instagram to get coffee. Like I was like, nice to meet you. You don't know me, but can we be friends? Um, so just putting myself out there, it kind of took the pressure off the figure amount
mm,
and trying to build something that I'm proud of and in a way that's livable. Like you still
mm.
obviously want to achieve basic goals of paying my bills, but I still just don't panic about it. I'm more hopeful in my approach of income and bookings and security.
Okay, this is a perfect segue into the topic of mindset.
Yep.
So you mentioned that you were wheelchair dependent until you turned 20. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what that journey was like?
I spent so much time being able to walk, then not being able to walk, learning to walk again, and then having another surgery, and it's on repeat. And I got to having kind of my last surgeries by my early teens, and then trying to work on then for the next literally 6 years, that mindset of like, do I need to be reliant on my wheelchair? Is it a mind over matter aspect? If I push myself enough, if I build my fitness enough, obviously there was still work behind it. It's all not just, oh, I can stand up and go for a 5 kilometer walk. But if I can really push through and see my greater potential, what could I achieve? So I think once I got to university and was surrounded by all these people that didn't have this knowledge of my life and my previous limitations, that they were like, why can't you do that? Give it a try. Like I learned so much from them being like, oh, you don't have to think the same way, or learning about even other things in life that I didn't do. Like I didn't drink before I was 21, like all these things that people influence you because they're like, give it a go. Like if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. If it hurts, get back in the chair. So it was really, I think, a lot of great people I met that really helped me push past that anxiety, that security, because we all love security, which I guess comes down to work again, where you've got security blanket. Can you leave it? Yes, you can, because you'll probably achieve greater things.
And it's such a excuse me, it's such an interesting topic when specifically in the space of the medical world, because obviously doctors do have a responsibility to say to you, hey, I really want to manage your expectations, around whatever it might be. And then equally to your point, when you get told something again and again and again, and you start to this is what your subconscious mind does. It starts to become a truth. And I know on my own recovery journey, so much of it has been how much of this is a story and how much of this is a very real limitation on what I'm capable of. And
Yeah.
it's just such an interesting dynamic. And I don't have all the answers, and I'm sure you don't either. But yeah, it's really curious how people with that different mindset, different perspective have really empowered you to try to stretch yourself outside
You
your
don't
comfort.
really think that you have that mindset until someone wakes you up to the fact that you're in this tunnel vision. Because like my whole life was about proving people wrong that I could walk. It
Yeah.
was about having all these surgeries and doing all these things so I could walk. And then it got to a point where it was like, well, why can't you let go of that last thing?
Mm.
And it was like, that's just a personal growth. That can be anything in your life, but it's like that realization of like, okay, I'm moving on to the next phase in my life. And maybe I need a little bit more freedom. And while I have that, I should harness that, work on it, and use it to my advantage.
Well, this is exactly what I do in the work that I do is,
Yeah.
people always have stories around, I can't do that, or that's not possible for me. And a lot of the time it's not our fault.
Yeah.
It's something that's been shared with us or a message that's been given to us, or perhaps it also has been our own experience. I'm sure there were plenty of times where you attempted to walk or do something and you were like, whoa, my
You're
brain's saying
saying
yes, but
no.
my body is saying no. So there also is that very, 3D experience of it as well. But specifically in the space of business growth and money, so many people are like, well, I don't want that, or I can't have that, or that's not for me, or I can't do the things that I need to do to create that outcome. And so much of that is me being like your friends were for you, just like challenging and saying, is that a truth? Maybe it is. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's a story or a limitation that you've placed on your potential. And, and can we look to reprogram that?
Yeah, and new environments, new people obviously help with that a lot. Different perspectives. We all need different perspectives, even if we all have unique perspectives on life. But even if you think, oh, well, I've faced so many challenges, so of course I know a little bit more than some people or about X, Y, Z. Let them question you.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you were so open to exploring that potential as well, because a lot of people would just say, don't be ridiculous. It's not possible. Or I've had this experience maybe once, twice, three times before. And I think that's the other challenging part of, navigating through discomfort through change is sometimes it's like, well, this is a real limitation that, I do have and I need to honor as well.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
So as a business owner now, how do you manage your disability and running a successful business?
Look, not always well. I think transparency is key, which like I already try and be. It's like I tell my audience, my clients, people on social media, where I'm at in life. I'm having a bad day. This is happening beyond my disability as well. We all have other health issues that happen. I'm just so transparent with where I'm at.
Mm,
And I think I also got to a point like early last year where I realized I couldn't do it by myself anymore. Coming out of COVID and the pandemic, I noticed that my mobility had really declined in some ways. more arthritis in my foot now, and I was struggling to stand for even longer periods of time again. And that's where I brought on subcontractors. So by having that subcontractor, it enables me through photo initially it was to take on that extra load or those shoots in terrains that are too hard for me to do, to still be able to do what I love, facilitate, create, micromanage, if you will, a creative project, and feel involved even when I can't be, and still be able to then create an income for myself through that. And then we introduced video, web, copy, and graphics to try and help. Obviously, with income, it's helpful to have another stream, but for me, it was about having an ease for my clients to have everything in the one spot. So my needs for being disabled and having people to help me is also now benefiting my clients, which is amazing as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it means you can deliver a really cohesive experience as well, that they can not just have these beautiful images, but also have beautiful graphics to accompany it along the way. I'm really curious, did you write the copy on your website?
I wrote some of it, and my copywriter, Laura, who's amazing, she's one of our main ones that we use. She did the homepage and some of the about page as well.
Oh, because I thought it was very clever copy. I thought it was
Thanks.
really
She's
well
very
written.
witty. She's amazing. And she captured my essence, because I really struggled moving from my previous business was Amy Carlon Photography to a company name that's not technically me. And I was like, how do I keep me as me, like my identity, like the way I talk and interact with people? And I feel like she just nailed it.
Oh, I love that. And this is, I unfortunately lack the creative gene in that area. I'm very creative. You give me a spreadsheet and I will carve it up.
Nail it.
But a lot of business owners rely on people who've got that real eye for design, the aesthetic. How do you ensure the cohesiveness now that you've grown a team of, the look and feel of your brand, or the parent brand rather?
That's a really good question. I think I attract like people.
Mm.
So for me, it's not about always the outcomes. There's so many people that can create great projects. There's trends and styles that everyone is doing and wanting. So that's determined by the world, not just my company. But finding people that I get along with and that respect me and my values as a company, and that I can relate to as well. So have decent conversations with on a personal level, in a professional sense, but understanding each other. And I think that really helps the team environment to make it cohesive, like the way that we're showing up and talking to our clients over email, or showing up to a photo shoot or a video shoot is they're getting the same essence and personality. And that was my goal when I scout people is, oh, I like you, not just because of what you produce, but I think you're cool. Like
It's so important as you're growing a team, isn't it? Because that's someone's whole perception of your brand
it is.
is,
And
yeah,
another thing is not everyone gets along with everyone. So
yeah.
there might be a certain videographer. I'm like, oh my goodness, I reckon you vibe with this person. Like your personalities are just on the same par. So it's about being able to forward think and look from an outward perspective of like, what will my client enjoy? Not just what do I enjoy doing? What do they need to feel comfortable and accomplish their goals?
That's so cool. And it's managing people is a whole different experience, isn't it?
It is, but I will say, especially with a bunch of health issues I had last year, that the people I work with just run with it. They pick it up.
Mm,
I can say this is happening. Like, don't worry, I've got it. And that's a perk of subcontracting too. They are also their own boss. I'm not
mm,
their boss. I can say I'm their client. I'm like, this is what we want. This is what my client needs. And the ability for them to take charge and have that respect and the authority to go ahead with things when I'm not doing well is amazing.
such a blessing.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, who are your role models? Perhaps people in business with a disability, or perhaps not?
It's a very good question. I would probably, like, my parents always had businesses growing up, and I don't talk about them too much because I get emotional. So bear with me. But
We're here for the cry, by the way.
you can edit the cry. Oh no, they've always had businesses. They've always been supportive, like sacrificed so much to do whatever I want to achieve. So utterly grateful for that perspective that they've given me on life.
Yeah. And they obviously are so incredibly proud of you as well. Obviously they've supported you and probably initially were a little bit scared when you were moving away, going out on your own. But I'm sure they're incredibly proud of how you've been flourishing, having moved away.
And they still help me a lot with my business. Like, I suck at numbers. Numbers is not my thing, right? But my dad is an engineer. He's just always been great with numbers. So I'm always calling him up, Austin, what does this mean? And he's like, okay, let me. Like, my mum helps me with a lot of my accounting stuff. Like, they're very involved in my business, and supportive for the needs, of my needs regarding my business, not just my personal life and my health, but like, oh, you're really trying to make something of yourself. So, and we know there's flexibility in that. So we'll help you. So having that support really helps you excel.
Mm. And are there any leaders, aside from your parents in the business world that you look up to and think, wow, that it's really inspirational what they've been able to achieve in this space?
It's a really hard one. People always say, oh, who you inspired by in these general questions. And I don't think I ever go, this person in their stories, what made me do what I do. I
Mm,
think I'm just so observant of everyone's journey, which
mm.
sounds like half-assed answer, but
No.
it's I don't fixate on someone else's goals and what they've achieved. You can look at them and admire, like, oh wow, they're doing this, they're paving the way for that, like Dylan Alcott and what he's doing in the disability space. Even in the ads, the commercial ads, have you seen those where they're trying to have more diversity and having people with disabilities in, like ANZ ads and stuff like that? That's amazing to see. Seeing small goals being kicked with regards to the disabled community in general, I feel like is quite inspiring. And then seeing photographers, maybe even in their skill set, seeing someone's photo and being like, wow, like, how did they do that? Appreciating that moment of work, that moment in time, not always investing fully in their story, but that one thing that I just glanced at, I found on social media, because that's what we're like these days. Sometimes you don't invest, you're just sitting there scrolling. And I take a moment for things that I stop at and appreciate why I liked what I saw.
I love that. Yeah, there's a lot of very talented people out there. And sometimes I look at people's images and I think, is that real? How did they, how
How
did
did
they
you do that?
even capture that?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anything else that you would like to share with the listeners of the podcast?
I would love to touch on, like, inclusivity in the workforce a little bit more. As subcontractors, I feel like a lot of us are working for ourselves these days and bringing other people in to, say, have a photo shoot for their business, and I think a lot of people wonder how to approach someone with a disability when it comes to a job, because as a subcontractor, you're not expected to know my whole health story, right? If you were my employer, you would know, because I don't have to disclose, but you do. And I think that's where it can get a little hard sometimes working as a disabled person in the creative field, in commercial aspects as well. And I just think that people should maybe take note of thinking regarding whether someone has a disability or not, saying in an email, on a phone call, how can I help you with this project? How can we best assist you? And that opens that conversation. It allows you to allow space for someone's needs, which we don't know. They could be anything. Someone could be pregnant, like the simplest things. it could be that someone is colorblind. That's another factor too. It helps a mile by just opening the conversation without assumptions, without judgment, so that someone can then have the confidence and build on that business relationship.
Yeah, I love that. It's something that we've started doing, on my journey to try and create a more inclusive business is that when we're hosting a retreat, we ask the question, are there any special needs that we need to be aware of? Obviously dietary requirements as well, but also even fears, phobias, things that we need to be aware of, because there might be some situations that people are suddenly like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be doing this. And to have that awareness of that in place. I know it used to be my biggest fear when we'd go, be going on a relaxing retreat, and then they go, can you introduce yourself to everyone? And I'd be like, no, this is not what I'm doing right now. Or if someone does say, I don't feel particularly comfortable with this, we can, is there a way that we can support you to make you feel more comfortable in this experience? And it's definitely an area that I know that I've got a lot of work to do in my own business, but I love that you've opened that up as a suggestion or recommendation for business owners to create a more inclusive space, even if it's not your actual employees, if it's people that you are working with. Yeah, I love that.
Because I always say to people, like, I'm no expert on everyone's disabilities or needs or phobias, you name it. So even I myself, I learn a lot from people and their limitations, and so it goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the podcast. I have loved our chat. If the listeners would like to come and check out some of these photos that I shared that I love, and find out a little bit more about you and your team, how can they do so?
They can find us on Instagram, Carlon and Co, or www.carlonandco.com online, or Amy Lee Carlon on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. I will share all of those links in the show notes for today's episode. Amy, thank you so much for joining
Thanks
us.
for having me. Appreciate it.